Hi, I'm Kili, also known as Kelly.
And I'm Fili, also known as Alex.
Welcome to our corner of the Shire,
where we will show you how to bring Middle-earth
into your daily life to keep you
a happy hobbit.
Welcome to this episode of Happy Hobbit. This is a very special episode because similar to the wine episodes, I filmed this over the course of several months and with lots of help from my family. And I'm going to show you the process of growing potatoes in your own hobbit garden. The first thing you want to do is assess the potatoes that you have that are seed potatoes. And you always want to use seed potatoes rather than potatoes from the store, because even though potatoes from the store will have eyes on them, they've usually been sprayed with an anti-sprouting spray so that they don't look like this when they're in the store, because some people find that yucky. But, so the first thing you do is look at your potato and assess how many, I believe they're called chits there are, which are the eyes that have started sprouting. So this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, just making sure I counted that right. And you could, in theory, cut this potato so that you have each one separate, but you can't be, it's not a promise that all of them will grow. So what you want to do is hedge your bets by, for example, I can cut diagonally here and have 3 and then have 2, and I can stick those both into the ground and hope maybe get 5 plants out of that. But for example, this one only has 3 at the top. Oh, let me hold it so you can see it better. It's got 3 eyes at the top, nothing at the bottom. So what I've actually heard is that the more potato matter you have on the bottom, the more likely it is to rot, so I'm actually going to cut off that there. As you can see, I have my assistant. He's actually a professional potato inspector. So he's just inspecting these. See if they, oh, he's inspecting my equipment as well. Yeah, did they pass approval, sir? Let's see, it's a, you always want to get your seed potatoes inspected first.
So, this one's got 3.
Now, as you can see, fresh, beautiful potato, but you don't want to plant that in the ground because that's moist and it's perfect for fungi and bacteria and yucky stuff to get into. So you actually want to leave it out for several days until the potato is able to scab over and harden this part before you plant it in the ground. Careful, Delta, that's a knife. Delta, that's a knife. Let's come back into my lap. Come here, honey, come here. Okay, yeah, I don't want to cut myself open. Delta, this isn't quite safe for being a potato inspector. This is getting strange.
Just stay on the lap.
Stay on the lap, young man. He gets in these moods where he has a full-blown love fest, and it's really sweet, but at the moment it's a little strange. Delta. Okay, not near the knife. Top of all the potatoes, this is... Okay, let's stop. You're gonna destroy them. I'm gonna try to slowly take the potatoes out if it will let me... Nice time. Gentle. Stop that, Delta. You're gonna ruin my potatoes, please. Don't. Delta. Psst. Enough. Delta, enough. Psst, psst, psst. Come over here, Delta. Delta, come over here. Come here. Delta, get out of there. No. No. Delta. Just one more. Delta. You can bite your tail all you... No! gonna break the microphone. I've rescued all my potatoes. I'm just gonna let him bite his tail all he wants. This is what I mean about he gets into these love fests. Oh my gosh, he's going insane. So now that the potato inspector's not here, you can see I cut some of these up into even smaller pieces, and that's because the sprouts looked really strong and several of them were closely clumped together, and rather than have them be in competition with each other, I thought I'd hedge my bets and see if I can't get these to grow. Here's all the potatoes, and they're under this to protect them from any hungry rodents or birds, and mostly from the potato inspector. Right, so here I am getting ready to plant more potatoes, and we live in sand, so our soil isn't exactly the best for planting potatoes, and they're heavy consumers, so they need a lot of organic material, a lot of phosphate. So what I've chosen to do, in all but one of my plantings, is use containers to plant the potatoes in. So to try to replicate some more natural situations, I actually have a 30-gallon fabric container. People call them Smart Pots. There's actually a company called Smart Pot that first started making them, but generically a lot of people call them that, or just fabric containers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix in some organic material, which is mainly root mass that I've dug out of our other garden beds, with a few handfuls of our natural sand and some potting mixture, some extra phosphate and nitrogen, and a lot of manure. I actually have the camera right now wrapped around a pole and part of the garden fence. The first thing I'm going to put in is Garden and Bloom G&B Organics planting mix. You want to build up 6 inches before you plant your seed potatoes. Whoa. Okay. That's a lot. Can you see that? Can't tell what it's filming. Well, you can see in there. I'm gonna put my gloves on. Just kind of assess how much I spilled in there. Oh, when you spread it around, it's not really that much. So now I'm gonna do some handfuls of our native sand. See all this dust coming up? That's why I didn't want the camera right next to this. Okay, and here's some of that rooty stuff I was talking about. See how it's just kind of stuck together? It's just more organic material that will, eventually decompose and help give some nutrition, or nutrients rather, back into the soil. So, putting some of that in there. I'm breaking it up because I don't want it to inhibit the potatoes, just to add to the soil. And this is the same mix I did for the 10-pound bags. If everything goes according to my hopes and dreams, I'm gonna have a lot of potatoes at the end of the summer. some of that mixed in. And I do this, mix it around a bit. Break up the big clumps. Here's the manure. Chicken manure with other things added. Actually gonna need more than that. Alright, I've got more manure. Now the bag says it's composted chicken manure, but there's other manure in there as well. Something that looks like rabbit or goat, or goat or sheep. Something that looks like donkey, maybe a little small horse. I have to say it's really weird to me to be using manure and to seeing manure when I don't know who it came from. I think only other agricultural people will get that, but it's weird. Alright, come on, poop. Alright, let's see how much we got in there. A little bit more. Okay, now I'm going to add some crystallized fertilizer, which is largely potassium, then some magnesium, and some sulfur. So you add, oh, you can't see my face, sorry. You add 1 teaspoon per gallon. This is 30 gallons, but I'm not filling it all the way up with soil. I'm only filling it up 6 inches. So I'm guessing that this is about 10 gallons right here. So I'm gonna do about 10 tablespoons, and I'm gonna err on the side of less because you don't want to burn the plant. I'm afraid to add more than that even. So now I'm going to mix it up. My mom calls this wishy-wishy washing machine. Unlike I come across a big chunk of, this is a giant poop. Just break it up. You can use your own compost too, if you have any. There's a use for everything in the natural world. Okay. I'm gonna try to just even this out here. And I just want to get an idea of where I'm at. Oh! Wow! I'm at 5 inches. I'm really close. So, I'm just going to add some more potting mix. Just to bulk it up a little. Now all I'm doing really is making enough soil for the seed potato to grow in. To grow the actual spuds, I'm going to use hay to cover them. Okay, mix it up. That's probably 6 inches now. Yep, perfect. Ready for the potatoes. Here's a good shot, oops, of what it looks like. Rich, thick, and dark. Rich, thick, and dark with, you can see the roots and other organic material in there. And that's just, is that a grub? Might have been a grub. That's a lot of nutrients for the potatoes to live off of. I don't think I need that giant dead. That's a dinosaur kale root. I'll have to break this up a bit more. The reason you want to choose containers like the ones I've chosen is because as the potatoes grow, you're going to be adding more and more either soil, if that's your choice medium, or in my case, hay, to keep the plants dark and to encourage them to keep growing taller and grow more tubers. So you want to think about your horizontal space, but it's also important to consider your vertical space. For example, the soil, as you know, is only filled to about here. So as the potatoes start growing, I'm just going to keep mounding more and more hay, and probably until this is completely full. And at that point, I'll have to monitor the leaves and consider harvesting. The reason it's so important to try to make sure your potatoes are always covered as they grow and to keep mounding is not only are you going to get a greater yield and more potatoes, but potatoes are actually a member of the nightshade family, and once they're exposed to light, they start producing the same toxin that nightshade produces. And luckily they tell us they have it in them because you'll see green, so never eat a green potato. But that's why you want to make sure that they never get light so that they remain edible and healthy. These potatoes look fairly desiccated. You can see the chit or the sprout coming up. It's getting kind of shriveled, but it's leathery and hard on the side that once was moist, and that's what we want to help prevent bacteria and funguses and other things like that from getting in. So this potato, piece of potato, seed potato, is ready for planting, and I'm going to nestle it into the soil with this, the eye pointing up. I'm going to plant this big guy with these purple potatoes. See how this one has 2 sprouts on it? That is just extra ensuring that I will get something to grow. And the way you plant them is very simple. Just gonna kind of part the soil, stick the wedge in, and once I have them all in here, spaced about 12 inches apart, I'm gonna come back and mound more soil on them. You can see I have my 4 purple potatoes planted. Now I could probably plant way more than this. They need about 3 gallons of soil for each potato, and 30 gallons is obviously a lot, but I want to give them space to grow large to try to replicate real growing conditions. And I have some odds and ends of, this is a little bit of a red potato. Doesn't look very red, but it used to be, I guess. It doesn't look very promising to me, so I'm actually going to plant it here in the middle, and if it grows, it grows. If it doesn't, oh well. So I'm just going to cover the potato with a little hill of soil. You want to do enough that it won't wash away from the hose, and I will do that for each potato, and then I'll put on the hay. So as you can see, I've got all 4 of my potatoes covered with little mounds of dirt that have been wetted down. And I do that just to make sure that the pressure of the water on them isn't going to make any of them emerge from the soil prematurely. So now that my potatoes are watered, I'm going to cover the whole thing with hay. And I love this hay, not only because it was for free, we were helping the feed store by cleaning up their floor, but look how little the pieces are. Unlike big chunky straw pieces. These little pieces are great because they're going to decompose faster, and that's just going to add more nutrition to the soil. And plus, they're a little less likely to blow away since they're smaller, and once they get damp, they'll be held down more. And if you do have a problem, you can crisscross sticks and things like that on top just to try to hold the hay in place. But that looks pretty good. Now I'm just going to water it. These are some composting bins that are actually stackable, and I'm repurposing them for growing potatoes. This is my attempt to do like a raised bed, and so I did the same thing in these as I did in the big container, with the soil mixture, mounding, and then hay. Now, potatoes don't need a ton of water. You don't want to keep them wet. So to determine if it's time to water or not, you pull back the hay and stick your finger in the first inch or two and see how my finger still has some compost and soil to it. That means that it's moist enough. But once that's dry, that means it's time to water again. So it has been, I want to say like 2 months now. I'll put the actual timestamp in the description. Since I planted the potatoes, and I wanted to show you the progress. It's a very windy day today, so I'm hoping you'll be able to hear me okay. But today, I've already started this process and I'm going to continue it. Once the potatoes are several inches tall, you want to hill them. And the method I'm doing is using old hay or straw just to mound it up around the base of the plants, just to make sure that any growing tubers underneath aren't going to get exposed to sunlight. Look how big. Now, the wind blew over the fence a little, so they look a little sad at the moment. But check it out. And look at this. I'm worried a gopher's trying to chew through to get to my potatoes. But, gosh, everything's blown over. This wasn't a good day to try to show you an example. Look how tall these plants are. These are the ones I most recently planted. Actually, these are the ones I most recently planted, trying to have a crop specifically for Thanksgiving, but that's okay. So what I'm going to do is take a plant like this, see how tall it is, and cover it to about there, which is several inches, just to really ensure that none of the tubers growing are going to be exposed to sunlight. And also, the more mulch you do, the more it helps the soil retain moisture, and wind like this really dries out foliage, really dries out plants. But also we're going into summer and we get some really hot spells here, and I want to give these plants the best chance they have so we have the best potatoes we can have. As an example, I'm going to use this potato patch. So these ones I already hilled once they got tall enough, but I might go through and put a little bit more hay. And the one that I have not is this little guy who's growing, you know, a little later to sprout. So I'm going to cover that one up to about there. And as you can see, all you do is take some hay and you're literally just hilling it. So you're just piling it around the potato. And I'm sorry, this isn't the best lighting. Oops, not the best filming either, Kili. It's hard gardening and filming at the same time. But it's like a little piece of barn rope in there. But the reason I'm doing it now, even though it's not the best lighting for filming, is because it's about 4:30 in the afternoon and I'm going to water this in and water all my potatoes. And I want to make sure that the leaves have plenty of time to dry before the coolness of night sets in, though it's going to be windy for a while, so I probably don't have to worry about much fungus growing on the potato leaves. You just kind of tuck them in. It's like you're tucking them in for bed. And what's great is as this stuff decomposes, it's just adding more and more organic matter to the soil, enriching the soil. So that's cool too. Well, here we are at the end of the summer. I wanted to give you an update on what the potato plants are doing and what they look like. Unfortunately, as I'm sure you've noticed, there's some footage missing in terms of plant growth. I went camping and then was finally allowed to go see Bard, my partner, in Ireland. So I did that this summer and I ended up being gone for over 2 months. And while I was away, my family took over looking after the garden for me, which was wonderful. And it's a family garden anyway, but they did a great job and the potato plants grew really big. They've suffered a bit in our California heat. We've had some heat waves. We're going through one right now, actually. It's in the 90s right now. Yesterday it was over 100. That's really tough on potatoes and other cool weather crops. In fact, the only plants we have growing right now that don't seem to mind it are the sunflowers, the zinnias, the tomatoes, and the tomatillos. But other than that, everything's kind of like, wait, why is this happening? And I feel bad about that. But I will show you what they look like, the potato plants look like now, in contrast to what you last saw, because they are winding down and they're kind of at the natural end of their life cycle. And I've actually already harvested a handful of plants because they were starting to get attacked by like a potato bug, looked like it was eating them. So I've harvested a few already, and I'm gonna show you what they look like. As you can see, it's quite different than the last time you saw it. So this was that little one that I was hilling. It grew big, but this is it winding down. You can see, I'll reach under the netting. I put the netting here because supposedly deer don't eat potato, but I wasn't going to take that risk because our deer eat everything. Our wildlife eats everything it's not supposed to eat. I had a gopher eat a whole row of onions, which are supposed to kill a gopher, but it didn't. It came back for more. So, as you can see, one part of the vine's completely dead. So this part of the vine is completely dead. This part I'm leaving in the ground because it's still green. I'll wait for it to die back. These ones, these are the where potatoes would have been growing at the base of those. I thought I got them all, but what will happen is if you don't get them all, sometimes another crop just starts growing. So that one, I really don't know if I should let it try. Maybe I'll let it try as an experiment, but there isn't really much hope for this guy having time enough in the growing season because we're at the end of August. We do have a really long growing season where I live because of everything's been shifting with climate change. We've had longer and longer summers, which aren't necessarily good for drought, but they are good for growing things. So I might see. This one I planted. This was one I just had left over. It had fallen when I was letting the chitted potatoes dry out, so I just planted it in a Home Depot bucket because you want to make sure when you're picking a container that it is 2, 5, and I think there's one other symbol that you look for in the recycling symbol, and that means it's food safe. So this bucket's food safe, so that's why I'm growing the potato in it. But you can see it looks really nasty. I actually don't think this potato's sick. I think it's just at the end of its lifespan. And we live in such a dry environment, we don't have to worry about blight, but other places you do. So, here is the bucket you watched me plant. So these are the blue potatoes. As you can see, most of them have withered away. So I'll have to peek under the straw and start getting potatoes, but I am just waiting for this one to finish up. And once the vines die, you want to let them sit there for about a week or two to let the potato skins thicken a little, otherwise they'll be really delicate. These potatoes are still, they look really pathetic. These ones are looking pretty okay. So that can give you a sense of what they looked like in their heyday. Some of them even blossomed and had pretty little flowers. That is a squash that snuck in here, but that's another story. So as you can see, they're definitely winding down. Here's the ones I planted for Thanksgiving. They're still going a little. These are russets. Everything's just having a tough time in the heat. The corn is starting to dry out and wrap up. I hope I didn't leave it on the stalk too long. But yeah, so that squash is a Tahitian butternut squash, which grows really large. You can see one growing down there, and it's kind of taking over the garden. So I think it's about time to harvest. As you can see, there's a lot of garden behind me. It is suffering in this heat. Those of you who are my supporters on Patreon, thank you so much. I so appreciate it. But you guys have gotten to see garden updates throughout the growing season. I hope you can hear me above the wind. So if you don't support me on there, that's a fun place, and we have a little community there if you want to go check it out. And I do post things like tours of my garden and very windy. I post tours of my garden and behind the scenes things like that. And it's a fun fun little community. So what some people do when they harvest is you can take a wheelbarrow and you take your bucket and just pour it all out and then rummage around for potatoes. And I've only harvested a handful, well, not a handful of potatoes. I've gotten more than a handful, thankfully, but I haven't harvested that many potatoes, and I haven't done it that way yet. I've had fun kind of rummaging around, but that's the benefit of the buckets, is you don't have to worry about if you're using a shovel or a hoe to dig up the ridges in the ground. You don't have to worry about stabbing a potato because you can do it by feel, and that part's really cool. Sorry, my hat is casting a shadow, but as you can see, the ones in the 10-gallon buckets are also winding down. This one actually only had one potato plant sprout, so that's something I definitely learned. I did cut some of those potato wedges a little too small, and there just was not enough energy. Oh no, wait, this one did have two. Look. A couple of these, though, I think it was this one, only had one plant come up, and it's withering away now. But, so I did definitely cut some of those potato wedges too small, and they just didn't have enough energy in the tuber to germinate. This is one of the 30-gallon buckets in which I did an experiment, actually. This is all red potatoes. They've completely died back. They're ready to harvest. You can see everything's very dry. And instead of chitting the potatoes or cutting them up, I actually planted them whole because I saw a lot of discussions among gardeners arguing over if you actually do get more bang for your buck if you cut them up or not. So it'll be interesting to see how many we have in there. I hope you've enjoyed going on this journey with me on my first ever time growing potatoes. Now, stay tuned because there's another episode coming where I show you how to harvest and store potatoes. And one big thing that I learned throughout this process that I want to do differently next year is only plant one potato variety in each container, because what ended up happening was different varieties mature at different stages, and then I have to leave them in the ground longer, and sometimes that allows time for insects to get to them before I do. So that's something I've learned moving forward, and I hope that you've learned something as well, and that you're encouraged to try your hand at growing this delicious hobbity treat. Because it doesn't get more hobbity than potato. Oops. Sure. Yeah. Battery's low. I know. So I'm trying to do this quick.
Yeah, I see you. Oops. Oh, thank you for that kiss. You're very... One of your whiskers came off, sir. Oh my gosh, look. His whisker. Oh, don't rub on that. His whisker came off. Okay, let's...
No, hey. Let go. Let go. If he broke my microphone, he has to pay for it. You are a crazy kitty. He tried to destroy all my potatoes. This is so bizarre, Delta. Trying to film Happy Hobbit to show how to cut up the seed potatoes, and he started attacking them and then attacking me, then attacking the microphone in his love fest. You're crazy, Delta.
He's slappy peppy.
You're crazy. He does this for like 10 minutes and then he exhausts himself and he just goes to sleep.
Kind of like pet games.
Yeah, he's so weird though, because I'm not even petting him.
He makes his own joke.
I think this is his box, and that's why he got upset that I deigned to touch it. He bites his own tail. Yes, you do.
Don't look at me.
No potatoes. Yeah, those are our potatoes. Sorry, sir.
You've gone crazy. You're going to have to go to the institution.
I know. Look at him getting his tail. Well, I hope you enjoy. I hope you've enjoyed